I'm making this recording in between episodes. I brought my 22mm socket wrench and my ratchet, rotated the crankshaft a couple of times. Now you can see it's on its timing mark. You can see the timing marks on the camshaft sprocket and on the engine cover are aligned, which is not the case on the right hand cylinder bank. From this point of view, you look at the timing mark, it's one tooth ahead. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel and welcome back to the work on my project 1993 Lexus LS400. I've done some work in between episodes. I filmed a little bit. I'll include the clips later in this episode that include draining of the coolant from the cylinder block. At this moment I am waiting for the tool to hold the crankshaft pulley so I can loosen this nut, pull the pulley off. I brought my bearing puller kit. When I have this pulley removed, I can remove the covers, this carrier, and then have access to the timing belts and access the water pump. Anywho, the goal of this episode is to remove the intake plenum and all the wiring, cables, lines that are surrounding it, then have access to the intake runners, clean out a bit, and then assess the damage that has been done by the folks that have installed the LPG installation. And hopefully I will be able to remove some faulty wiring that's hiding under there. So, less talk, more work. Off we go. So the first order of business here is to take photos. I've seen some hoses, some vacuum hoses and some pipes aligning that were changed and altered by the folks that have installed the LPG installation. So I want to be able to trace everything back, so I'll take photos, many detailed photos, and then start working. I'll start working on the left hand side because it's the simplest part. The most work is over there on the throttle house. There's some cooling lines running through. I've drained everything by now, so should have no leaks. I also took some pictures with the bore scope, have a look inside the cylinders, didn't look all too bad. And I took a peek inside the intake plenum. You can clearly see that the car has been running on LPG for quite a while because the intake plenum is much cleaner than I'm used to see from these LSs, because of when they run on petrol and the EGR system is active, you get a whole load of crap into the intake plenum and a lot of carbon is built up, and only carbon I could see on the bore scope images was on top here, so it looks fairly clean. It's almost 1 hour later now, and I removed what I think is all of the lines that are connected to the intake plenum, loosened all the bolts. One that was specifically hard to get by is, let me point it out, that one over there that connects a cooling line and the EGR. They were a bit hard to reach, but I got them out. So let's give it a try and pull the intake plenum off. I'll be doing that off camera for two reasons. I can't film with one hand and pull with the other hand, and I'm pretty sure there's some bolt or thing or line I forgot, so I have to undo that. So I'll make this a one scene pull, hopefully, and then get back to you when all is off. And honestly, it came off in one pull. Only thing that kept it a bit in place were the hoses connected to the underside of the throttle body, being a coolant line, and this PGV line. It's quite dirty down there. I'll show you the plenum next, a moment. So here we have the intake plenum. Looking at the belly, here's the hose for the PGV, and take a look in there. I try to scratch it a bit. There is some slight carbon buildup. It's really dark in there, but from my expert opinion, it's clear that this car run on LPG for most of its life. LPG is a very clean burning fuel, and it results in very little carbon buildup via the EGR system in the intake. So I'm happy with that. I've got some cleaning to do, but it is not as bad as I have seen in my previous LS. So before you and I take a closer look on everything is in here, the intake runners, the fuel injection system, before I pull that off, I'll get the vacuum cleaner, vacuum around a bit. There's a lot of loose dirt and especially a lot of this aluminium corrosion coming loose. I did see something fall into the intake runners. It's something, well, you can't prevent when working on a 29-year-old engine. So there will be some dirt getting into parts where you don't want it, but I'll try to keep that amount to a minimum. So I'll start a vacuum cleaner and go vacuum around a bit. So step by step we are getting there. I've been able to pull the right hand side fuel rail out and the injectors, and you can see there's a bracket laying down there, the injector holes, but it's an awful mess. It's muddy. So first thing I'm going to do is to cover those holes so no more crud gets into the engine, but it's an awful mess. And you can see here where the LPG feed line, injector line, it doesn't actually have an injector, is drilled into the intake runners. So I'll show you the injector rail, right hand side injector rail. Have a closer look at the injectors. They came out. It was hard to pull them out. Let me pull it that way. But they are all out. These have some cleaning to do. These ones, the first 3 cylinders, 2, 4 and 6, do have the this rubber gasket on them. But of number 8, the gasket is still stuck in the intake runner. So I'll pull that one out later. I took a peek inside it. It's fairly clean. There's no residue or anything. So, another task and some extra costs, but it's always a good idea to replace all those rubbers and those tiny gaskets on there. So, the fuel rail on the left hand side is out and things are looking much different than on the right hand side. It's much less greasier, and I think it has everything to do with a leaking valve cover gasket. But you can see there's some strange debris lying down there. Shed a light on it. There's something that came off this, not sure if you can see it on the camera. This connector piece broke loose, it wasn't connected. You can see I have to plug up the injector holes. There's some residue left by the mechanic that once installed this. Some tape and a piece of hose or something. And same as here, they just drilled a hole. Let's see if I can pull it off. Now I'll do that later. Pull those hoses off and see if I can have them welded completely. So next thing is to find out how to take the intake runners off. So before I end this episode, I want to focus on one thing. The reason why I'm doing all this, it's not because I wanted to have a peek inside the intake plenum or necessarily replace the timing belt. The reason was that cylinder bank number 2 over there was failing this summer, and it had everything to do with the wiring loom that was cut. So the LPG computer could interrupt the petrol fuel injectors, and has clear signs over here. This side, the left hand side, it's much easier to get to, and you can see things they've done to the wiring. You can focus on this. This is cylinder number 5. And the colors of the wire going in, it's a blue one over there and a black orange on top, and it comes out as a green one over here, or the isolation of the cable is damaged. You can see the copper wiring is bare over here, and this connector was broken. Not much signs on this one where they cut the cables. You can see here also is the interrupter cable that went to the LPG computer. But over on the right hand side, they left the interrupter cables in the wiring loom, went over here, they stripped the ends of it and reconnected them, so the original wires were reconnected. So that wraps it up for this episode. Unfortunately, we didn't get the timing belt off or the water pump, which was the original goal, but we got a lot of other stuff done. I hope you liked following me along. I'll be working from home for the next couple of days, so I won't be working on a car for this week, I think. One thing I need to do is to plug the fuel line, which is under there, but it's covered up right now. So I hope you liked following me along, and if you'd like, give me a thumbs up and maybe subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching.